Ladies and gentlemen, it's Wednesday night,
Ooh.
November 25th, 9 p.m. Eastern. It's Crawlspace Live, the Gossip Pod. I'm Tim, being joined here, as always, by Lance. Lance, what's going on?
Well, the church bells have tolled their 9 chimes. And I know where my family is. It is here at Get Vocal. But seriously, this is not Thursday. This is Wednesday. It's a special show. I remember last week when I was concerned that people wouldn't be around to partake, but we have filled up the chat room. This Get Vocal room is buzzing at 9:01. And we got a really, really cool guest on tonight, and a really, it's a very interesting, perplexing case, but it's great for discussion.
It is, yeah, and it's an unsolved murder out of Saratoga Springs in 1980. It's the unsolved murder of Sheila Shepherd. And before we get into that, I do want to say, if you are watching this on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, on November 25th, around 9:02 p.m., why don't you click the link and toggle your butt on over to Get Vocal and join this wonderful chat room, this wonderful community full of like-minded folks who want to talk about the case. And you will be among friends here if you click that little link and toggle your butt on over.
Get your butt over here. If not, we'll burn you. We'll go on our Patreon and we'll burn you.
Yeah, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/crawlspace podcast. But Lance, yes. This is a special night. We met a woman recently. Her name is Marcella Hammer, and she is from Saratoga Springs, and actually has a personal relationship with one of the investigators that is actually the lead investigator on the Sheila Shepherd unsolved murder. And by relationship, I mean she was his nanny, if I'm not mistaken. Was that the connection?
Yeah, she was his babysitter. She literally knows him since birth. Chris Callahan, investigator for Sheila Shepherd, and she also knows his partner Matt Wilson, which I guess is called. I think she's calling him Hot Matt. I think it's Hot Matt because he's a good looking guy. He is. Both of them are very handsome. But if I were to choose, if I had my druthers, I'd be a Team Matt guy. But they are. What is happening tonight? Where am I going with this?
Well. They are. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I got kind of caught up in fangirling over Hot Matt. But no, all of these new faces, welcome to this show. We typically do it on Thursday night. This is a Wednesday night before Thanksgiving. We're talking about Sheila Shepherd, but these new faces, I believe, are part of the true crime club that Marcella is in charge of. I think she's sort of the moderator. She's the organizer of it. And I believe she has put the call out to members of the True Crime Club out of Saratoga. And they are showing up.
Absolutely. And we know they have a great interest in this case and have spoken about this case with the investigators. I know Chris Callahan. I'm not sure if Matt Wilson was there as well, but also Aunt Terry, Sheila Shepherd's Aunt Terry, who we had on our series as well. And another thing before we get too deep here, I want to mention that we just launched a spin-off feed, which includes all of the episodes that we produced on Crawlspace about the unsolved murder of Sheila Shepherd. And we've been launching these kind of separate feeds really just for ease of searchability. So instead of going through the 200 plus episodes of Crawlspace to find 7 Sheila Shepherd episodes, you can go right to the Murder of Sheila Shepherd feed, and you can hear them all right there without having to go anywhere else and scrolling and being confused about where things are.
Right. Because we've been covering so many cases, they all sort of have to be categorized and organized. And I just want to also give a quick shout out to Jared from Even the Podcast is Afraid, Jared Ortis. as we were saying the sentence, Jen, you and myself, we were saying the sentence, do you think Jared has enough bandwidth to do logos for all of these separate feeds? He sent 3 different versions of each logo. He literally heard us in the ether, and he made the logos and sent them. And as we thought about adjustments to make, he made them and sent them. So it's magical. Yes, it is magical, and he does work fast, and he does great work. So just a quick shout out there.
He's incredible with the speed and great work, and he's been doing a lot of these logos for us, and we can't thank him enough. Jared Ortis. So check out his shows too. Even the Podcast Is Afraid and Southern Oddities. And I just popped the link into the show notes there, the chat room for the Spotify feed of the murder of Sheila Shepherd. Okay, Lance, you want to open? Yeah, you want to open the boxes here?
Let's open the boxes.
Let's do it.
We have royalty. We have Mike Morford, who just joined. Yeah, royalty.
He's here.
Ryan, our Maura Murray, Butch Atwood expert is here.
Yes.
Good crowd. Jason, who is working on a, it's a secret project. I guess I can't say anything now. No, I would never drink Mountain Dew, Shannon. This is an all-day IPA.
So Marcella, feel free to hop on whenever you'd like.
Grab that spot.
Yeah. So we're talking about the unsolved murder of Sheila Shepherd, and Lance. She was found, or she was killed, I believe, this night 40 years ago in 1980 on November. Actually, no, she was killed on November 23rd, and she was found on November 25th. This day, 40 years ago, in the pretty small town, I guess, depends on your definition, but Saratoga Springs, yeah, it's a city. Saratoga Springs, New York, really a lovely city, and this is the only unsolved homicide in the city's history.
Right. There was another one that was sort of on the city limits, but I don't know if that officially counts. We'll get into the details of Sheila's murder, but welcome Marcella too.
Marcella,
howdy.
Get vocal. True crime Thursday, Wednesday.
I'm so excited to be here with you amazing humans. And yeah, so Saratoga, we like to call it a micropolitan city, like micro.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
A micropolitan city, where I like to call our podcast a micro pod. My jokes are really bad. Yeah.
Yeah. The biggest podcast.
More sips of your IPA and try it again.
No, I think I'm just going to mute myself.
Oh, fine.
Well, welcome to these airwaves. We are excited to talk about the unsolved murder of Sheila Shepherd. And so tell us a little bit about your true crime club and what you did to congregate to discuss this case recently.
So I'm so excited because I see so many of them popping up in the chat. And by them, I mean our true crime club. So it all started once upon a time back in the olden days of 2019. Do you even remember that? It was so long. I know.
No.
So long ago. So I work for a company called Palette, and it's a cafe, but it's also a mostly women, some emotionally evolved men, community and co-working space. And part of that whole jam, my official job title is I'm the unicorn. And part of that jam is like when people come in, I ask them questions and I figure out what everybody's into and then design programming around it. Come to find out, we had a pretty large group of mostly women who were like, yeah, true crime, into true crime. Hence, our true crime club was born. And so we started in August 2019 and realized we had enough interest to make it a weekly event. So we've been doing Wicked Wednesdays every Wednesday ever since, mid-August 2019. The first time we met, shout out to Liz Zach, who's one of our members. She brought Sheila's case to our attention. And, I'm very old. Like you said, I was a nanny.
I got carried away with Lance's British accent. I think
I think that but it worked. So I have known Chris for a very long time, and that was just a coincidence. But I grew up here in Saratoga Springs and bopped around, ended up back here. Here I am. and at the same time had never really heard about Sheila's case. There are a couple of other like funky things that have happened here, but this one was really new to me. And this group member, Liz, is so invested in it and really had so many stories about it. And it really started our entire group on this journey to find out more about what happened to Sheila. And kind of here we are. Because I know Chris, I gave him a little like shout out on the Facebook, a little, what do they call it? The sliding into the DMs, but it wasn't creepy. And asked him to come and speak to our group. And he was willing to do that. Then Sheila's family came to the event, and we really weren't expecting that. I feel like I'm not doing a very good job of like building it up and doing the great storytelling here. But
doing a great job.
Thank you. But we had this packed event back in the olden days before COVID, and it was just a really engaged audience listening to Chris talk about his experience investigating the case. And, you know, like I said, Sheila's Aunt Terry was part of the audience, and it was amazing. It was really amazing. I know that you guys spoke with her when you did your episodes, and you know the one where you really spoke mostly to her was very powerful. So you know the connection was immediate. It was completely fantastic, and she's the reason that I even talked to you in the first place. I would have just like let you be true crime celebrities off in your pods there. But Aunt Terry reached out a couple weeks ago and let me know that today is the 40th anniversary of the day that they found Sheila's body. And did we want to do anything? And here we are.
It's amazing. Aunt Terry is an incredible woman. She really wears her emotions well, and I mean that in a very complimentary way. You can see that there is a sort of energy that's boiling beneath. When we were talking with her and we asked her if she had anyone in mind for the murder, if she thought there was someone specific, her reaction to that was, yeah. She just held up one finger. She smiled and held up one finger and was like, yeah. And then we went to Sheila's grave, and she just was locked in on looking at the grave, and you could just almost hear the wheels turning in her head. Like she's constantly committed and thinking about Sheila's case. It's her niece, you know, and she was there when they found the body. She didn't go in there, but she was present when it was her uncle, right? Or that came out?
I think it was her husband at the time.
Yeah, her husband, was the one who actually found Sheila's body. Yeah, so amazing, and an amazing woman. So I'm glad that she was. I'm glad you were able to connect with her, and she connected you to us, because I feel like you have a big. I think your True Crime Club can be a big influence on this case.
I really hope so. The passion is very much there, and you know, like I said, Saratoga is micropolitan. Everything is so close by, and it's something that you guys touched on in your podcast, that so much of it and so much of Sheila's life took place in like just a few miles of our downtown area. And that's very much the case for a lot of people. It is a pretty close-knit community. Like, let's be real, it's tiny. And it is something that, like I said, we're so invested in, and there's so many other people who are so passionate about it, like Chris, Detective Callahan, and Matt Wilson, who we call the hot cop. That's what my mom calls him, is the hot cop.
Handsome.
That I just had to clarify. It's not just handsome, no. But yeah, I really think that we do. It's just so close. One of our first meetings, we took a walk to the apartment where Sheila was found, where she was living at the time. And it's just eerie and inescapable. And in such a small town, it's like everyone knows everything. Everyone knows all the stories about everyone, and you know all the gossip. And someone has to know something and isn't saying it.
Did you want to invite some, maybe your Liz being very invested? I see a Liz that's been chatting it up in there.
Yes, Liz is super invested, and Abby is super invested. How do listen? This is like, Zoom was a big thing for me this year. I'm quite old. I don't even know how to invite people.
We'll just say it. Liz, why don't you grab that spot if you want to come on and talk about how you got into Sheila's case and what grabbed you about it. Grab.
Oh, the best part about Liz is that she like shook down this bartender trying to get information about all of this, like gangster style.
Oh, let's hear that.
Yeah, we're very scary, us Saratoga people.
Now, that was recently. You shook down a bartender from that era back then, or?
I think she is just like I think once you see her, she's very energetic, and she has no problem just saying, so what do you know? And say, oh, you're lying. You just tell me more. Tell me more.
Wow.
Very energetic.
This was the this was the bartender that, oh no, she's saying that it's not working. She can't grab the spot.
What? Liz, you're not as old as me. Pull yourself together. You can do this.
So she was talking to the bartender that was working that night. Did I miss that?
No, I think that it was just like I said, it's a small town. And, the bar scene that is in Saratoga, it's very centrally located. And there's a significant number of bar establishments in a small area. And a lot of those bartenders are lifers. And a lot of the locals are lifers. And they go to the bars. That's what they do.
So the bartender.
There's Liz.
Hello, Liz.
This is, I've been staring at a screen all day. I just got off a 2-hour-long police reform task force meeting on Zoom, and I'm going cross-eyed. So literally I went to a bar that's like a hole in the wall called The Alley. I didn't grow up here. I've lived here for 5 years, and I recognized a bartender that I had seen just around town. He's got muscles and, and I like a crazy person went up to him. He was outside smoking a cigarette. And I said, do you know about the Sheila Shepherd murder 40 years ago? And he was like, yeah, I actually was bartending the night that she was last seen. And, he was interviewed. And it's a testament to how small this town is. I knew about this case, but what really reinvigorated my interest in it was that I saw in the paper that they had reopened the case in 2018. And about a month or so later, I was going to see my friend Jess at her apartment, and I hadn't been to her place before, and she gave me the address. And I remember thinking, this address seems familiar. And it wasn't until later in the day when we were walking the dog that I just I stopped in my tracks, and I was like, I need to confirm this. And she lives in the apartment building, and she has the other unit that has a fire escape. There's 2 units that have a fire escape. So after trying to figure out whether or not she lived in this apartment, I just threw my hands up and I said, I'm just going to go over to, the police department. It's so close. So I went in there, and again, like a crazy person, I said, I need to talk to the person who's investigating Sheila Shepherd to find out if my friend lives there. And I remember talking to, I can't recall his name, but he's basically the person who's overseeing Chris and his investigation. And I asked if they had received any new tips since the article, and this was maybe a couple months later, and the articles that were in the paper in 2018, I think it was November, and he said, a few people have called, but nothing new. Yeah, I mean, I'm super interested in seeing this solved. I feel like we have the resources, and it's just, I think that this case is going to be solved with a combination of someone coming forward and DNA. I think both components are really crucial here.
Yeah, for sure. For anybody who does not know the details of Sheila's murder, maybe some of them do, but they heard it through Tim and myself. Would you, Liz, like to describe the murder of Sheila Shepherd? And I guess, when did you first hear about that?
Liz, you were born for this moment. I'm so excited. Carry on.
Okay, you're gonna have to fill in details for me because I'm so wiped today. Okay, so to answer your second question, I am the person who starts a new job and Googles literally like company name plus murder to see if anything has come up. So when I moved to Saratoga, of course, I was interested in figuring out what the scene was like here. I knew it was a safe place, but I also came to realize that this, 40 years ago was a very different scene. And anyone who's lived here that long can tell you, Marcella can tell you. It's still really hard for me to envision that though, because it's just, I can't imagine that walking to that apartment today, having the night that she had and feeling unsafe. I live downtown. I've lived downtown for a few years. So it's just, it still is really hard for me to wrap my head around. So Sheila had moved back from Colorado, I believe, recently. There has been, I don't, maybe you guys know a time length, but there was nothing in the news other than just a short time ago. She had relocated back to Saratoga where she had family. Her estranged husband, I believe, was in Long Island on that night. She had a small daughter who was,
yeah, she was 2 or 3 at the time.
2 or 3. And I believe, and this is a theory that I kind of just want to explore further, and I'll get back to that. But her daughter was staying with the father's relatives, so the child's father's parents. She was 22, I believe, right? 22.
Yep.
And like the bar scene today, it's not unusual to go out and see someone somewhere, follow them somewhere else. It seems like she was out pretty late that Saturday, I believe. There's the timeline is really iffy, and there's not a whole lot of confirmed eyewitness things that could be backed up. Also, a lot of that has to do with not having seen. Sorry. And what I've got, she was not heard from for a few days, and she was working. I believe the place was on Church Street. She was working at basically a secretarial type school.
Yeah, she was going to school there.
Yep, and she didn't show up on Monday, and her teacher, again, just showing how close everything is and how confined everything is to this really small area. They sent someone to her place, and I remember reading somewhere that one of the colleagues that went there to see if she was home had heard music playing. And I've read other places that there are people who said I think it was a neighbor who said they heard music. I think it was that Sunday. So couldn't get a hold of her, left. And it was her aunt's then husband who had the idea. I guess he was told by Sheila's brother, who had known that Sheila kept the window by the fire escape unlocked, and I think he had used it to access that before. So Sheila's uncle at the time was the one on Tuesday, I believe it was, to finally go and walk up the fire escape and try the window. And sure enough, he opened the window, and the bed had been up against the window, and he discovered her body under a sheet. She was tied to the bed, bound to the bed. She had I think it was the bathrobe sash or a scarf of some sort in her mouth. And most chillingly, she had a knife protruding from her stomach. This has really baffled a lot of people. There were no signs of a sexual assault, and the stab wound was, they determined it was made post-mortem. So this is really, I mean, we've gone in circles over this, and we've talked about the possibility that, because there was no sexual assault or evidence of it, we've discussed the possibility of a female perpetrator, staging a scene. We've discussed, a sexual experience gone wrong, and an attempt to cover that up.
I just want to interject really quickly and say that she was completely nude.
She was. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes. So she's completely nude, knife in her stomach, in her abdomen, and that was post-mortem. Yep. And the official cause of death was essentially suffocation.
Yeah, asphyxiation. And I believe she was tied, bound with her own shoelaces.
Yeah. I want to point out that she was bound to the bedposts with her hands, I believe, with the shoelaces and with a bathrobe, like the line or whatever the rope tie from that. Yeah.
What's really unfortunate is when he had stumbled upon this, he was understandably completely just horrified, and he had gone out the building through her apartment door, and he couldn't really with any kind of certainty remember if he had unlocked it or if it was locked or if it wasn't locked. So, you know, I get that he was in a state of panic, but I mean, I kind of lean towards the side of it not being of it being locked, just because there were a few people that like had been sent to the place, and I would imagine that if someone had gone missing and I was there for the purpose of trying to figure out if they were home or okay, I would try the doorknob, you know.
Is it odd to you that he went up the fire escape first to try the window instead of going to the door and knocking?
Well, I don't know that he. I mean, so the door to the building itself, I know today is locked. I don't know if that was the case in 1980. You know, I would imagine that if they were all there, if Terry was there, if the uncle was there, the mother, if they were all there because no one can get a hold of her, I would assume that they had exhausted that kind of, you know, attempt. When you approach the building, you guys were there, so you know. I mean, it's right up front. It seems like such an easy solution. If you know that that's her apartment, you know, why that's how you that would come to my mind. I would go up there that way.
Yeah, I think you're right. And there's, I believe, 8 apartments in that building.
I think it's something like that. There might be 1 or 2 more. I'm trying to picture the building from when I was there 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's
yeah, 8
it's like a very
right.
big house.
4. Yeah, I think there was 4 below and 4 above. I think it was 4 on the first and 4 on the second.
And at the time that I was there, and that day that I was there at my friend's house, Sheila's apartment, someone had just moved in actually, and their door was wide open the whole day, and they were just, you know, kind of, and Jess's dog went and ran in there, and we had to go and grab him, and it was kind of eerie, but yeah, I'm curious to hear what you guys think about, you know, after being here, boots on the ground, which I think is really great, and, you know, does a lot of justice for you know, this investigation. What do you guys come away with? Because I feel like we're so close to it that we all have kind of like an emotional investment that's really hard to separate ourselves from, and it's hard to find someone else interested in this case, which is crazy because I feel like that has all the components to want to have that, you know, to have that coverage, but it doesn't.
Well, the biggest thing I took away from it is that Matt is very handsome.
Mm-hmm.
I know, yes. Had to fan myself off. I mean, there's so many things to take away from it. There's the ex, there's the person that she went to school with, she took those classes with, who said that he wanted to tie her up and put whipped cream on her, and there's what appears to be a whipped cream container in the sink. Or there appear, yeah, right. There was a like a Cool Whip container, and there was what appeared to be Cool Whip there, and she's tied up. The knife is baffling. The post-mortem, I mean, you can get into an incredible like psychological breakdown of why somebody would do that.
Yeah,
put a
also,
knife in somebody post-mortem and then cover their face.
Right. She was covered with a sheet as well afterwards. So that's confusing. And I think normally, I think the rule with that is that if the body is concealed like that, or it's someone that knew the person, I think that's typically the psychology there. But in this case, I don't know. There's a lot more too. I wish we could have gotten more of that John Douglas profile. Because
you should have seen Tim when Tim got to look at the profile, and he was he looked at this profile, and he was he was putting it to the investigators, as well as Tom, the old investigator. It's Tom, right? Tom, I can't remember.
Yeah,
Tom Mitchell. Yeah. Tom Mitchell was very friendly when we spoke to him, very forthcoming with information. And once we sat down to the interview, it was like he was being interrogated and he wasn't saying anything. He just shut off. And we try
to talk about this case. I feel like I want to interrogate everyone who's in charge of interrogating suspects.
Well, this Tom Mitchell's got a really like old school exterior, like a really old school cop exterior. It doesn't matter if it was 4 days or 40 years. Like, he's not going to tell you anything. This is what the cops do, not what people who have a microphone do.
Yeah, they want a prosecution, and they're not going to give us anything that can jeopardize it on the record. and
it's like harder to shake down a cop than a bartender, Liz. I'm sorry.
Unless you're Tim. Tim literally took him by the lapels, and he was like, "You give me the truth. Tell me what happened."
Witnesses. So, no,
Brock, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Brock.
One of the things I kind of want to talk about a little bit about is the means that she was. So her body was found with shoelaces and a bathrobe that were there, a knife that was there. To me, a lot of it seems like it wasn't premeditated. But I kind of feel like, and again, some of us have explored the possibility of a female suspect. I feel like if it were a female, there would be a reason for her to be there, and that would be more premeditated. And I can't really say why. It's just kind of the way that I feel about it. I lean towards a man, but I was doing some due diligence to see if anyone had anything new in the interwebs there to say about the case. And I went on a Reddit thread, and there seems to be a very popular theory on Reddit where they draw a lot of attention to Sheila's, I guess, ex-in-laws who were caring for the child. And I suppose the motive would be if Sheila weren't in the picture, you know, that side of the family would have, you know, custody of the kid.
I don't know. Well, to Terry, when she said one, that was what she meant. You know, she and I believe her family, they do suspect Sheila's ex-husband.
I had a conversation with her at Palette. She's very, I mean, she feels very strongly that is the case. And she, you know, she gave me some reasons why, you know, from the funeral. And, you know, I kind of, you know, he was ruled out, and I get that there's, you know, I mean, I can understand where she's coming from. I think that his alibi is solid. And I completely empathize with her about the idea that it seems to fit. You know, I don't see it logically.
He was ruled out? Sorry,
he was, because he had an alibi. He was in Long Island. He had witnessed.
Yeah, sorry. I know he had an alibi and was at least several hours driving distance away, allegedly. But I hadn't heard that he was actually ruled out.
I guess we never really asked the question then, because I gathered from the idea that he had an alibi that he was ruled out. But that you may bring up a good point. Was that something you brought up with Chris? And
yeah, I maybe I'm confusing it, but wasn't there an account from somebody at a bar or a bartender in Long Island that said that night he was so drunk I'm surprised he was even able to walk home, let alone drive 6 hours?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Was that from Long Island, a bartender there? So that might be part of the alibi. But
I think it was a friend or a bartender. I can't remember.
And it was like way out on Long Island, I think near Orient, which is about as far away from Saratoga as you can get on Long Island.
But again, that doesn't rule out, you know, the possibility that whatever motive he had might be shared by other people that were local.
Right. Well, I just want to point out that I don't think it's ever been confirmed when Sheila was killed. I think there's been
bring that up. It's very
conjecture whether it was Friday. She was found on a Sunday, and whether or not she was killed on a Friday or Saturday is still not determined. So I think you're right that the ex there has his alibi is good for one of those nights. I think the night is most likely.
Yeah. And you also mentioned the funeral. You said Aunt Terry talked about his behavior at the funeral. I don't know if a lot of people really know about that. When he, you know, she could feel like the sweat coming off of him. Can you talk about what she told you about him at the funeral?
So she had told me that when he arrived, he, you know, took a look at her body and in the casket, and again, like you said, he was sweating and he was kind of speechless and had said something about I need to go out and get flowers. and he left and he didn't come back. And is that the extent to what you know about that?
He said he was going to go out to get flowers, but she had told a little bit more detail where he had shown up and he was sort of just standing there in the corner, or just kind of away from everybody, and he was almost like visibly sick, and he was shaking and sweating, and she said that either she touched him or somebody else touched him, and said he was like radiating so much heat and sweating that they could feel it. Like they went to touch his back and they could feel it. And then he said he had to go get flowers and he never came back. I mean, that could be attributed to him being a raging alcoholic and just like trying to process what happened to the mother of his child. Or
yeah,
I mean, I kind of find it hard to believe that he would actually show up to the funeral in the first place if he was the killer.
And you go back to this scene and you think about how that calculated kind of, the scene itself, it was very meticulous. It was done in a very particular way. And if that person were to show up at the funeral, I would feel like that person would be a cool cucumber, cool as a cucumber. And that's just the kind of, the MO was just, it didn't paint me a picture of someone who was noticeably uncomfortable, or I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is I very much believe that this is a person who, like you said, an alcoholic, trying to process what was happening, the fact that the mother of his child is laying in front of him. And I'm sure a lot of eyes on him, because who are you going to look at as a suspect first?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And Shannon in the chat room points out that some people just aren't good at funerals.
Yeah.
But kind of notable, I would say. And also notable that I believe that flowers were and ended up being missing from Sheila's grave, per Aunt Terry. When we were there with her, that is what she said. She said that they were
several times.
Yeah. And also this is not a gravestone that says Sheila Shepherd in big letters. This is like a plate in the ground that says Sheila Shepherd. So it's not incredibly easy to find in this cemetery that isn't huge, but it's big enough to
it's
where
pretty
you need
big.
to go.
Yeah.
It would take you several hours to just walk through and try to find it.
Yeah, it's in the last row. It is. I'm not even exaggerating. It's in the last row of the cemetery, and it even has her. It has Shepherd and it has Van Ness on it as well. So, I mean, we were just speculating if the killer was there. The way that they would find that grave is either driving around looking for it, or they would have seen the funeral service. They would have seen that and known the general area of it. But yeah, Terry was saying that there was there were flowers that were taken on several occasions. And we're talking, this is like the winter. And we said, well, maybe it was the maintenance crew that would come through and sort of clean things up. And she was like, no, there was always other flowers on other graves. And and that was not disputed by the current investigators.
Yeah. And Mike Morford in the chat room here, who's covered a lot of serial cases, he says there are surprisingly many cases of murdered women with a knife still embedded in them.
But post-mortem?
Yeah, we actually asked some law enforcement about that too, and they actually said they said that it is more common than you would imagine, which sounds crazy to me because I thought it was super rare. And kind of pointed to almost
in what way? More personal, someone familiar with the person, stranger. I mean, in what? How common is it, and what kind of crime?
Let's see. I don't know.
Morph is a bit of an expert on most things. He just moved to Florida, so now he's an expert on sunshine.
Well, he did say that. Oh, God.
I just want to call attention to the fact that now everyone calls Aunt Terry instead of Terry, which I really appreciate.
Hundreds of
Yeah, and Morph does say that this, tying up and using a knife after she was dead, it does sound like someone who might have done this before and or since, and that was looked at. We know several different serial killers were actually considered. I'm not sure questioned, but definitely at least investigated in this case. One of them I know, I think his name was Joseph Nano or something. The alphabet killer.
Yeah. His full name is really freaking Guy. That's his last name.
I will say this: the day that I went to the police department, when I found out that I was hanging out in this building and my friend lives in this apartment building. I wish I remembered his name, but the person who's overseeing Chris in this investigation, he had expressed to me that I remember him saying, like, almost word for word, I mean, it's not some crazy like serial killer out there or something, there wasn't anything like that. So he offered, and I remember that clearly, because I was like, that seems like he's offering that without any kind of, because those were rumors, and they're more than rumors. They looked at, the possibility of that. Comparing this to another cold case that was, I guess, solved, or at least they Pam DeVizio. That murder happened in July, and that raises a lot more questions about suspects because it was in the middle of track season. And anyone who's not familiar with Saratoga, we have a big boom in the middle of the summer of people coming from all over the country. This is basically how downtown restaurants and bars really sustain themselves is through this business of these few weeks of people coming to the racetrack. But this was November, and you might have some more people coming home from, wherever they're living at that time for the holiday. I don't know. It just screamed really local to me.
And Shannon actually brought up an interesting, she had a question. She wanted to know if the was a knife that belonged to Sheila. And yes, it was a knife. It was a steak knife. It was just a basic steak knife that looks like it would have come in a set of 4. And I want to point out that one of the crime scene photos, there was another knife. It really looked like someone went there and had dinner with her and used their steak knife to stab her afterward, because there was a fork and the same knife in the sink, and it was from the same set. I'm just saying that's kind of what it looked like to me. Susie, you're late. You're late.
It's unfortunate because I kind of get the feeling that if she had been around town a little bit longer, if she wasn't so, newly relocated back to Saratoga, I feel like people might have a better grasp on, who she was hanging out with and who she might have been with. But it's just a complete mystery, really.
And also alcohol is involved. And that makes everything so hazy and so difficult. And, like Liz was kind of speaking to the downtown scene in summer in Saratoga, it extends all the way into the autumn. Like, let's be real here, Liz. The only thing that stopped Saratoga from partying is a global pandemic. And so it's not unexpected that people are regulars. Like, we were kind of talking about this before, like people who live in Saratoga, they're lifers. Yeah. They are regulars. They're locals.
I'm a complete outsider. And I feel like in so many different aspects, but that's why I think I'm really passionate about like keeping this case like in everyone's faces, because someone knows something. I think that is such an overstated phrase, but like, God, someone somewhere knows something. They do. And it's you walk up to a random person at a bar and you ask them if they lived here for 40 years and they say yes, and you know that they know something. And it's just so frustrating because I get that an investigation takes patience, but and actual careful work.
Liz, you're like, I have none left. I want the answers now. I will use my fists.
This isn't like a 20-year-old case. This is a 40-year-old case. And we're right, I feel like, on the cusp of being able to solve it, but almost being too late for anything really to be done.
Yeah. Well, we have the whole DNA. We have the whole DNA angle with Othram. They're not quite ready to pass any stuff to Othram at this point. I thought their answer was kind of morbidly comical when they said, and anyone who's not familiar with Othram, they're an independently run company that does they perform DNA extraction and DNA testing. And maybe not extraction, but anyway, you get it, DNA testing. and they have worked on several cases and brought them to conclusions. And I thought that the answer was morbidly amusing when I think Chris said that it felt like more, using them felt like more of a last resort. Like, what do you like? It's been 40 years. Like, when is last resort? Like 80 years?
And we're in the middle of a pandemic. Like, this is the last resort. Like, you need a lab that, I feel like this is a gift at the doorstep. And it, unfortunately, it makes me think about some things where I know that Chris is really passionate about this. I remember from his presentation to us that he was completely hooked when he would hear his mom and his aunt talk about it when he was a kid and driving in the car. I know that he's just as passionate as we are, but I feel like because Saratoga is the way it is, such a small, everyone knows everyone and everyone knows everybody's business. I feel like there is, I wouldn't be surprised if there's any kind of pressure externally, or internally to be careful to tread carefully.
And I want to, before I forget, I want to address Morph's comment where he says they may not have much left, much DNA evidence left. And I don't know what they actually have, but I can tell you that looking at the crime scene photos, it did appear that the person who perpetrated this did not clean up after themselves, probably left a ton of DNA everywhere on silverware, on plates, on glasses, on the knife, in the bed. I mean, everywhere, on the shoes that were neatly placed on the floor. But we also saw pictures of the crime scene where there's jackets over chairs. There's police officers basically smoking. So I don't think that they had the same practices when they approached a crime scene. I think it was very loose when they approached the crime scene.
No, you're absolutely right. It's interesting that he's put it that way and that use the phrase "not much left." I have when he came to see us at Palette, he had presented it in the way of, we have pieces of evidence, we just don't know if there will be a DNA hit. And I think just to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying, it sounds like they would have had a lot of DNA, but it's probably a lot of it is contaminated.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And Morph asked, why would they be afraid to use it? We don't know that they're afraid to use it. We do know that it has been sent to the New York State Crime Lab, and it has been sitting there for about 2 years, untested. And that's a big bummer because the good work of investigators Callahan and Wilson, can't really you can't really pass the baton when the partner you're trying to pass it to isn't running with you, so that's a bit frustrating. And I know some legislation held up the testing, but apparently it's going to be tested soon. And we wanted Othram to get involved because they go soup to nuts. I mean, they take it from beginning to end. They'll extract the DNA and clean it up and then do the genealogy. So, I mean, because there's several steps here that the investigators in Saratoga Springs are still going to have to go through. So they have the DNA, the crime lab can get a sample or markers, and then they can start their genealogy process. But, we're still a ways away. But yes, to everyone's point, there's more than enough DNA there.
Did you get the sense that answer of, this is the last resort was, were you not agreeing, but were you satisfied that was the real reason? Or were you, what would be the
Yeah, I just think that it's hard to take it back from the crime lab once it's been there. I think it's in the system at this point. And so I think it would probably be, I don't know if insulting to anyone personally or what the situation would be, but to take it back now and say, oh, let's send it to this private place. We think they can do better than our own people. That kind of doesn't send a good message. So I think it's probably in that ballpark that we're talking.
Yeah. And I think his exact words in that email was, it wasn't last resort. It was, they need to make sure that the lab and law enforcement exhausts all possibilities before reaching out to an independent contractor like that, which I get, but it's like, again, like why are we exhausting them now? Why haven't they been exhausted at year 25 or year 30?
Right. And does exhausted mean waiting for it to be tested, or does that mean waiting until it gets tested and then, if it's inconclusive going that way?
Well,
It's just,
think about it this way, Liz. Here we are on like some sort of technological platform, being able to have this conversation together in all different areas of the country and God knows where else about a case that happened in Saratoga Springs 40 years ago. So we're thinking in a way that the traditional way of police thinking maybe perhaps does not go. And this is like, there's a hierarchy of how things are done. And bravo to everyone here for being creative thinkers and wanting to find the solution at any cost, as opposed to this is the way it's done. And, that's why I think that podcasts like yours are so important, because not only do they bring these cases into the public consciousness and keep people talking about it, but it encourages the police forces and the investigators to really like think of new creative ways to find these solutions that they haven't been able to find for 40 years. I believe that the evidence that's being tested, Detective Callahan and Detective Wilson found the box just about 2 years ago. Is that right? Like they didn't even know it still existed.
You're right.
It moved from like storage facility to storage facility, and they found the box, and it was like an aha moment. And at that point, I believe that's when it was sent into the system, because they play by the rules. And you guys are rebels and renegades.
Oh, we do not play. We see a rule and we smash it right with our feet.
Mm-hmm.
We're the motley crew of true crime podcasts.
We really are. We will burn the rules to the ground, and then we will make new rules to replace them, and then we'll break those too.
That's the way it's done.
I have to say, one of the things that really like blows my mind is I listen to all kinds of true crime podcasts. I mean, it's insane how many I subscribe to, yours being one of them. But I've heard it on one other podcast, and I'm a Web Sleuths member, and I'm on there all the time. There's like 2 posts about Sheila. It just blows my mind, knowing all I know about what makes a good case, that people just don't know about this, and it's like it drives me nuts.
Oh yeah, there's so many elements to this case. Sorry to interrupt, but there are so many elements to this case that are so interesting and so fascinating, like the keys. What's your feeling about the keys? Because we heard that they couldn't find the keys, and then how many months later, after the snow melted, I don't remember the exact month, but it was
like March or April.
Yep.
4 months later.
4 or 5 months later, right across the street, keys were discovered, and they were turned in, and it allegedly were the keys to her apartment. But that was after we had heard that the entire area was searched. So those keys would have been found literally across the street, like across the street, not exaggerating. It was, you walk from that door across the street.
I mean, I think that would be, if the door was locked and there was reason to toss the keys. I also know that I have my old apartment building, which was right on Broadway in Caroline. I had 2 entrances, and like, not even after a night out. I mean, there were days where I would just be tired and come home from work. And I remember one time I was on my phone, and I was unlocking one door, and I got distracted, and I started walking, and I walked to the other entrance, and I thought I had forgotten my keys at work. And long story short, my keys were in the door of the other entrance. And like, I just feel like it's, maybe she dropped them, but maybe someone had them and locked up after they left. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess how would she have gotten in the apartment if she dropped them? Maybe the fire escape.
Yeah.
Possibility. I mean, I think one thing that we kind of, I don't know if came up with is the right idea, because we probably weren't the first ones, but one thing that we posited was that if the killer took her keys and left through the front door and locked the door and then just tossed the keys. And there was also a box of photos missing, right, which would also point to that kind of weird tinkery, if you will.
Yeah. What did you make of that?
The photos?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds very personal. It sounds very personal. It sounds like it's either very personal and somebody was trying to remove maybe, I don't know, maybe they were overthinking it, and I'm going to try to explain this as best I can. Maybe they were overthinking everything in the heat of the moment, and they knew that these pictures existed, and they wanted to remove any evidence that this person knew Sheila. Like maybe this person was in one of those pictures, and they took, they just like grabbed as many as they could. And then there was the account of the person who saw like a flashlight in Sheila's apartment a few nights after.
Yeah, which is one of those things that I'm not really sure what to make of it, because I know it was in the police report, and we heard, I think even read that part. But then investigator Tom Mitchell was like, no, that never happened. Not at all. So I'm not really sure if that's something that happened and it's something to be suspicious of, or if it's kind of something that happened they looked at back then and it was nothing. And then Tom was like, why are we talking about that now?
Well, do you remember one of my favorite moments during that that meeting that we had with Chris and Hot Matt and the old investigator Tom, was when Tim was going through the profile that John Douglas wrote, and he really laid into them. He was grilling them, and I think Tom, we had a small crew there. We had somebody who was doing the camera, audio, and sort of a line producer type. And afterward, I didn't see this happen, but afterward, this guy John, who was helping us out as sort of a line producer, came up to us and he was like, did you see Tom's reaction when you guys were saying these things from the, when you were going over the profile? And I guess Tim and I must have been looking at the profile when Tom was doing this, but he was looking at Chris and Matt like, what are you doing? Like, you're letting these guys look at a profile. Like he was not happy with the questions that were being posed to him based on that profile. And then they had to backtrack. Like, you were asking them questions. They were like, yeah, that was probably just something that was something. And the ad, the newspaper ad and all that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. There was some touchy stuff in there. That
we were so badass that day.
Well, I'm grateful that you guys were, because I want to be so badass every single day I go outside and think about this case. But I mean, I live here, so I have to drink this one.
Yeah, just a little hint on what some of that stuff. It seems like newspaper clippings. They pulled from the case file that maybe the killer had sent in personal ads. Yeah.
Freaking creeps, man.
Yeah, bunch of creeps.
I have the day after, the days and weeks and months actually following that revelation that my friend Jess, who I'd worked with at the time, we worked at a restaurant in town. And she was a bartender and I was a waitress. And I had a file. It was Sheila Shepherd case 001. And I went to the library, I did microfiching, I printed it out, and I would take it to this restaurant every day. And every Tuesday, I remember, we had Jess, who lives in the building, her live-in boyfriend. This would be like after hours. There was a regular named Adam who would come in and have a cigar in our cigar room. There would be Stu, who moonlights as a bartender once a week, but he's a lawyer, and myself. And we would all just, like, at the end of the night, just open up this folder and, like, just really try to wrap our heads around it.
It is a bonkers one, and we've gone 59 minutes and just scratched the surface on everything with Sheila Shepherd. I can't let this go without bragging for a minute. I found a clue to the whole thing that they didn't find, and I was so happy about it. It's probably not a clue, but they allowed us to look at the crime scene photos, and Chris and Matt got a little wheezy, a little queasy when they were looking at it. But Tim and I took over and we were like, we'll handle this.
Guys, let the professionals look at the photos. We'll deal with this part, okay?
Yeah,
we get it.
Yeah, I haven't even really gotten to anything graphic here.
We do this a lot.
Yeah, we're podcasters in the true crime field. But there was a picture of the the end table. And there was a pack of cigarettes on the end table, and I believe it was a pack of Marlboros. And when we spoke with Aunt Terry the next day, or maybe it was later on that day, I asked her what kind of cigarettes Sheila smoked, and she didn't even hesitate. She goes, Winston's. She smoked Winston's. And I brought that to their attention, and they were like, well, she probably just kind of smoked whatever was there. Maybe she just grabbed a pack, someone gave her a pack, but I think that's a clue. I think, Terry she didn't even hesitate. She said Winston. She was a Winston's girl.
All right. That is really spot on. And I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to steer you away from that angle just by, I feel like they're okay. Marcella, I know you are his nanny. We're his nanny.
I was not his nanny. I babysat like 3 times. I know him.
You were like his Mrs. Doubtfire.
You are.
I mean, there is a resemblance. It's true.
Someone up in the thread said that you reminded her of Pippi Longstocking, which is like a witchy Pippi Longstocking. I feel like she's so passionate and so emotionally invested, clearly, because it's family. But I feel like Chris himself, knowing his interest in this, is definitely emotionally invested. And I can absolutely see him, even when he came to see us, just kind of like maybe oversharing, or maybe not oversharing, but getting into dangerous territory, not really knowing just how cutthroat we are here. And, and the excuses of all these things, like, oh, maybe she just picked up a random pack of cigarettes or grabbed whatever, or, that's really a last resort for tests. It just seems like these are really weak excuses.
Well, you know what it probably was? It was probably one of the cops who was at the scene. It was probably his pack of cigarettes, and he probably threw it down, and someone took a picture of it, and he was like, oh, those are mine.
It's a possibility.
That's why Tim is shouting from the rooftops that we need to defund the police. That's not true.
No, Chris Callahan and Matt Wilson, they want this case solved, and I think they are pretty sure that DNA is going to be a big part of this puzzle piece, and I think they're probably not wrong. So I'm anxious to see what comes back. Obviously, we've been along for this ride now for about a year. We were up there in Saratoga last October, so been familiar with the case from that long. So we're emotionally invested at that point too. Obviously, the investigators are much more emotionally investigated. They want the case solved as much as anybody. So hopefully this DNA we can get some actual answers from this, because to your point, and I don't want to be critical, but I think if you're expecting this to be a thing, maybe you're not looking at something else. You know what I mean? Like that cigarette clip.
I think that cigarette clue is the clue. It's the clue.
Yeah. Close the book. Close the book on the case. Yeah.
We're all speechless.
I mean, you could see the color out of their faces when that was brought to their attention. They basically panicked. They had to go and splash some water on their faces, and I think Matt even was crying.
I believe he's sensitive.
Yeah, he is.
I've heard.
He's very sensitive, which makes him more handsome.
It's true. Vulnerable.
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
They were very intimidated by us.
I can believe it. You seem very
I
intimidating.
think Chris was intimidated when he walked into the pallet, although that was a really intimidating atmosphere. We were all waiting for him. We had this chair set up for him, and we had to walk. We were all waiting, and he was a little nervous. I right before he walked out, I was like, "It's all right. We're good. We're gonna grill you."
And Terry's here, and so is the rest of the family.
Yeah,
but it's gonna be fine. It's fine.
Yeah. You really put him on the spot there. And you know what? Like you're talking about Saratoga. This is the only murder. No pressure, Chris. It's the only murder that's not solved. Just maybe want to solidify your legacy here. But, again, no pressure.
What really sucks is I feel like it's just really the people who are honestly the only people who are really interested in solving this. It's not the community at large. Lots of people are really happy not to even think about. I mean, it's not even something that people are like, we don't talk about that. It's like, why would we talk about that? It's in the past. It's the pallet group, and it's Chris, and it's Terry and her family, and that's it. I mean, no one brings it up like as in like, hey, remember back when? I mean, that doesn't happen. So it's really, I think there's a lot of pressure. I feel like I put pressure on myself and in our group, and I want to put pressure on people who are able to solve this because
You're 100% right. We have once again blown through an hour on our True Crime Thursday, Wednesday.
Space and air.
Are you?
No,
Don't
no,
apologize.
This is great. Yeah, don't apologize. We appreciate your help. You know the case very well, as well as Marcella. So thank you both, Liz and Marcella, for joining us here on these airwaves tonight.
And in the spirit of Thanksgiving, we truly appreciate you guys. We truly appreciate the group that you have there, the True Crime Club. Anytime any one of you want to come on Crawlspace to just talk about crime, talk about any cold case that interests you, even if it's Sheila Shepherd again, or if you want to come back on the Get Vocal, you're more than welcome to. And of course, we are truly, truly grateful for everybody who shows up here every week to talk about all of these cases and raise the awareness of it. I know we have a good time. We call it the Gossip Pod, just to have some fun with it, because we do, we need to have a little, is it levity or brevity? Levity, and some brevity too. And, any other word that's a itty. But, it's good to know that we can come here and we can be with our group of crime, our crime family. And I think it just grew tonight with the True Crime Club. So you're all welcome back.
Thank you. We try to make a good impression, so you invite us back so that we can really make it a party the next time too. Our group meets every Wednesday. You are, of course, welcome to join us anytime. We run the gamut from, local true crime to historical local stuff. We do true crime cases and have podcast homework from just a variety of sources. Maybe we just do Crawlspace for a couple days. See.
For like a full year.
Every once in a while, like last week, we had paranormal investigators. So we kind of bop around a little bit. Just have some fun. So you can come see us anytime. In the internet.
And I think there was some comments early on about people who aren't in Saratoga. This is something that you can join virtually now, right?
Yeah, we're all virtual now because of we've been Zooming and Facebooking.
We love social distancing and compliance, so we do digital events. So love compliance and
We'd love to have everyone here join us.
Yes, we're not as exciting as you guys. We have fewer microphones.
I mean, I wouldn't don't put too much pressure on yourself. I wouldn't beat yourself up over that.
We're trying. I'm trying.
It's a completely different stratosphere.
These things are props anyway, really. Do you hear that? Do you even hear that if I tap
really
it?
Doesn't. I put two in front of me just because I feel insufficient in life.
Well, I'm sitting by an open window, so clearly you've got a lot to learn.
Well, you should probably close the window.
So much.
Dangerous.
Cold out.
Right? No fire escape.
There you go.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Well,
so is everybody ready for Thanksgiving? Sorry, I'm curious.
No, go ahead.
Everyone got their Thanksgiving plans, or are we staying in?
I think the whole world is supposed to stay in, at least America.
I mean, I've seen pictures of airports, and I would say they're not following the rules.
I know here in Saratoga, our I think it was the county sheriff who came out on Facebook or wherever he announced it and said that he would not be enforcing the Cuomo mandate. That's that.
Like what I'm really going to take away from Thanksgiving this year is that, how every year they do the presidential turkey pardon thing? The turkey this year was named Corn.
Yeah.
Corn and cob. Yeah.
Corn and cob.
That's all I got. Corn. I love that.
They were extremely white turkeys too.
Really exceptionally white. I was a little uncomfortable with that.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. Kind of like the diversity here in Saratoga. I'm going to sign off now.
On that note.
Thank you. Well, thank you both, Liz and Marcella, for joining us here tonight.
Yeah,
This
what a
has been-
Yeah,
delightful
thank you guys
night.
so much.
Yeah,
Can't
this
wait to see you guys again and catch up.
absolutely. Yeah, let's do it again. Yeah, this absolutely flew by talking about Sheila Shepherd, the unsolved murder of Sheila Shepherd from Saratoga Springs in 1980. Of course, she was found 40 years ago on this day. It's a tragic case. Hopefully, there can be some resolution in the next few years.
Yep. And we've been putting the link to, I hope it's the same.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, maybe is that the right one? But that's Palette Cafe where the
You got it.
action happens, where all the cool kids go. So if anyone's interested, they go to that link.
Mm-hmm. Go right to that link. Our true crime events are listed on the events calendar, and we have all kinds of cool things going. It helps to be local, but we're coming for you. Global domination, intergalactic, all of that stuff. So let's do it. And yeah, our true crime, it is a virtual event. It's every Wednesday, 6 o'clock. This is like very late for us. This 9 o'clock stuff, it's 10 o'clock. This is like bedtime. I'm very old.
Oh, that's
So come on again anytime you want to have us at 9 o'clock.
Very cool.
Yeah.
awesome. And
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone does have information on Sheila Shepherd's murder, you can contact the Saratoga Springs Police Department. And that number is...
Hold on, it's coming up right here. 518-584-8477. Or you can email tips@saratogapolice.org.
And just ask for the hot cop,
And tell them
and they'll know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And you know, I know Tim and I are super intimidating. So don't contact us, because I would, you know, they'd be very nervous. Like, I don't think it would go over very well.
So intimidating.
Okay, thanks everybody.